On this Sunday night, banning travel between provinces. Why BC is considering it.
Is there good evidence that a lot of transmission is coming from interprovincial travel?
The red flags from the legal community. Alberta eases pandemic restrictions, but is it too soon?
If we instead start to undermine that success, we'll be right back to where we were.
Cases are still high and the healthcare system is strained. Plus, Russia's opposition leader is detained upon landing in Moscow, and the world condemns the murders of 2 female judges in Afghanistan.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Federal and provincial leaders have urged Canadians to avoid non-essential travel internationally and domestically to contain COVID-19. With the exception of Atlantic Canada and the Territories, most of Canada has not been subject to interprovincial travel restrictions. But this week, British Columbia's Premier raised the possibility. John Horgan is consulting with experts to determine if it's worth imposing limits on people coming from other provinces and if it's even legal. Julia Foy has our top story tonight.
The combination of deep powder and low COVID numbers is attracting visitors to North America's biggest ski resort from outside BC. BC's Premier is concerned about the threat of COVID spreading from travelers and is exploring the idea of shutting the door.
I want to put this either to rest so that British Columbians understand that we cannot do that and we're not going to do that, or there is a way to do it and we're going to work with other provinces to achieve it.
The Atlantic provinces were the first to develop a bubble to restrict outside visitors, but experts warn it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
It's very different from Atlantic provinces. Sometimes it is almost impossible to truly patrol travelers coming through the mountains and through various parts of British Columbia.
In addition to geographical challenges, there are legal hurdles too.
Just by virtue of there being a pandemic and a public health crisis doesn't mean that we toss the Constitution out the window.
Zweibel contends that a government has to prove there's a problem first.
Is there good evidence that a lot of transmission is coming from interprovincial travel? And is there also good evidence that there's no less restrictive alternative that would work to deal with that?
The provinces of Quebec and Manitoba have brought in restrictions which require all interprovincial travelers to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Even domestically, try not to undertake non-essential travel is actually important, not just for the international context at the moment.
More draconian measures have been tried around the world. Australia locked down the state of Victoria for 111 days, while South Korea gained access to the public's private information to track their travel movement. Professor Mendes thinks there's a better way.
If, let's say, the ski slopes could be the cause of major super spreader, then think about specific messages attached to them, using the evidence of what devastation could be caused.
Julia Foy, Global News, Vancouver.
New Brunswick has restrictions on travelers entering from other provinces, but it's now dealing with the highest case numbers since the start of the pandemic. There were 36 new infections confirmed in the past 24 hours, the most in a single day, bringing the number of active cases to nearly 300. Most of the new cases are in the Edmundston region, which will now move into the province's red alert level of restrictions at midnight. The Premier warns the Fredericton, Moncton and St. John regions could soon follow suit.
We need to buy time for the vaccine to be rolled out. We must all take this seriously because the next step after the red alert is an entire lockdown. We have seen that in our neighbours in Quebec, in Ontario, and further west.
Much of Canada has tough COVID-19 restrictions, but Alberta has started to ease its measures. On Monday, outdoor gatherings will again be permitted and hair salons can once again take appointments. The provincial government says it's being cautious by reopening the economy slowly. But as Heather Yourex-West explains, Alberta's healthcare system is still under a lot of strain.
February 20th, 9 a.m.
For hairstylist Beth Lloyd, the past month has been stressful.
It's definitely been challenging. I'm lucky because my kids are older and they have been in school, but I know a lot of other stylists are just hustling like doing skip the dishes, driving. A lot of people's businesses didn't even survive.
Starting Monday, Alberta stylists like Lloyd will be able to return to work. Just a week after opening schools to in-person learning, the province has decided to ease restrictions once again.
We can't entirely ease up on this goal, but we can make small adjustments to provide Albertans with some limited activities.
Those activities include appointment-based personal care services and outdoor gatherings of up to 10. Funerals can now include as many as 20 people as well. After peaking in early December, Alberta's daily infection numbers have come down.
We've had some very good numbers over the holidays, and I think many of us are surprised that we haven't seen a Christmas surge, which is, fantastic news.
But the province is still seeing nearly 1,000 new infections of COVID-19 each day, and hospitals are still under strain. It's why a committee of Edmonton doctors, chaired by Alberta's former chief medical health officer, is calling on the province to wait before opening the economy anymore.
You should wait 4 weeks and then not activate the next phase unless you're sure that the previous one worked. If Alberta doesn't build on the success that we've had, if we instead start to undermine that success, we'll be right back to where we were.
Particularly with the added risk of 2 highly transmissible variants of the virus, the road to a safe reopening has become more perilous than before. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
The U.S. military remains on high alert tonight in Washington ahead of Wednesday's inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden. Within hours of being sworn in, Biden intends to reverse some of Donald Trump's most controversial policies. Jennifer Johnson has more on the Democrats' plan for his first day in office.
The inauguration stage at the U.S. Capitol is quiet. A dress rehearsal ahead of Wednesday's ceremony was canceled due to security concerns. Trump defense officials say they will protect Washington no matter what the commander-in-chief says or does.
We take Homeland Security very, very seriously. We deal with a lot of curveballs of all kinds, and yet we march forward to keep the American people as safe as we possibly can.
Lawmakers are shocked at what Washington looks like now.
It reminds me of visiting Baghdad, going to the Green Zone and seeing so much military presence and barricades. I never thought I would see that in our own capital or that it would be necessary, but there is a profound threat from domestic violent extremists.
On Wednesday morning, President-elect Joe Biden will not be greeted at the White House by President Donald Trump, as is tradition.
Good afternoon, folks.
Biden is already laying out his first 100 days in office, facing an economic crisis, heightened race relations, and a pandemic that has claimed 400,000 American lives. He has just named a new team of scientific advisors.
We're going to lead with science and truth. We believe in both. This is how we're going to, God willing, overcome the pandemic and build our country back.
The day he takes office, Biden will undo several Trump policies. The U.S. will rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement and repeal the ban preventing citizens from coming into the U.S. from certain Muslim countries. Biden will also sign an order protecting people from evictions and require masks on federal property and for interstate travel.
President-elect Biden, then President Biden, is going to come into office and take decisive steps to roll back some of the most egregious moves of the Trump administration.
Biden has spoken to lawmakers in Congress, asking them to push his agenda forward, including new economic and immigration reform packages, while also holding President Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate. A challenging start for a new president trying to heal a country after 4 turbulent years. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
State capitals across the U.S. are preparing for any insurgents ahead of Biden's inauguration. Today, there were calls for Trump supporters to protest the results of the American election. But for the most part, it was quiet. Even so, there are still concerns the smallest spark will ignite a fire of protests. Tonight, Mike Armstrong reports from Pennsylvania.
It was a very visible show of force. Police officers and National Guard stationed on every side of the Pennsylvania Capitol complex. As it turned out, few protesters turned up.
My free speech has been shut down.
There was one local man arguing the election was stolen from Donald Trump, and just meters away, 3 anti-Trump protesters.
I feel safe. Yeah, I was wondering on the way down how safe this would be.
Most state capitals were quiet. For days, authorities have been saying protesters would be out, that may have kept people away.
We come in peace.
In Lansing, the capital of Michigan, there was a small protest. Organizers say it had been planned for weeks. The siege on the U.S. Capitol January 6th, they say, wasn't the reason they were out. It's the reason they considered canceling.
The 6th changed everything for us. It made us really worried about coming out here. Obviously, you see the fences. They were really worried. The FBI stopped by my work 3 days ago to talk to me about coming out here.
Now, the FBI had warned all 50 states that extremist groups could be planning protests. As a result, in some states, people who applied for protest permits were denied. That may be one reason so few showed up. Another may be all the arrests since the Capitol riot. The FBI picked up another suspect in Nashville, Tennessee, Sunday morning. But it's been 10 days of arrests and perp walks. It likely isn't inspiring more towards protest or insurrection. It may be dissuading them. Whatever it is, the mayor of Washington says the threat of domestic terrorism has to be taken more seriously.
We never believed that so-called patriots would attempt to overthrow their government and kill police officers, but that's exactly what happened.
The extra security won't stop today. Most states will continue to protect their capitals through Wednesday's inauguration. Robin?
Mike Armstrong in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The occupant of the White House can make a big difference for Canada. The transition from Donald Trump to Joe Biden could impact everything from trade to the way Canadian politicians talk about each other. Here's David Aiken.
With nearly $2 billion worth of goods crossing the border every day, the Canada-U.S. trading relationship is each country's biggest and most important.
We have to have law and order.
Under Donald Trump, though, that relationship took some hits. Now, with Trump set to leave office next week, there is hope his successor, Democrat Joe Biden, will be easier to deal with.
There is no doubt that open and fair trade with Canada is good for Americans. And you know, the Democrats know that.
They might, but there will still be challenges. For example, while Trump gave the green light to the Keystone Pipeline, Biden has vowed to cancel that project. And from Canada's viewpoint, Democrats are as bad as Republicans when it comes to imposing harmful duties on Canadian softwood lumber. The final days of the Trump presidency have also had an impact on Canadian politics. The D.C. riots had many Canadians thinking about the conduct of their own politicians. The Liberals have ramped up attacks on the Conservatives, accusing them of using Trump-like language.
Join our fight. Let's take back Canada.
When they make comments that are inappropriate and that can be interpreted in the wrong way. And if it means calling them out, I think we as Canadians and as a society need to do that.
If the Liberals want to label me as far-right, they are welcome to try, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole said in a statement his office released Sunday. Canadians are smart, and they will see this as an attempt to mislead people and import some of the fear and division we have witnessed in the United States.
Now, that statement from O'Toole is unlikely to be the last word on the matter. There is likely to be a federal election in Canada this year, and already the Liberals are trying to paint Canadian Conservatives as bad and dangerous as those extreme American Republicans. And that, too, is another legacy of Donald Trump north of the border. Robin.
David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. The wreck of a fishing boat that went missing off the coast of Nova Scotia in December has been found in the Bay of Fundy. The Chief William Solis was found 60 kilometers underwater, sitting upright. Because of the depth, the vessel can't be recovered. Recovery teams are now assessing ways to reach it and search inside. An emergency beacon on the Scallop Dragger was activated on the morning of December 15th. The crew was on its way back to Digby after a week-long fishing trip. One body was recovered the evening the boat capsized, but the bodies of 5 others are still missing. Coming up, what was waiting for Russia's opposition leader when he landed in Moscow? The Kremlin's most prominent critic has been detained by police upon returning to Moscow. Russian officials say Alexei Navalny was arrested for probation violations and will remain in custody pending a court hearing. The Russian opposition leader spent the previous 5 months in Germany recovering from poisoning that he blames on the Kremlin. Labs in several European countries confirmed Navalny was exposed to the nerve agent Novichok. The Kremlin has repeatedly denied poisoning Navalny. In Afghanistan, an investigation is underway into the murders of 2 female judges. Local media say the women worked for the Supreme Court and were on their way to the office when they were ambushed. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. Targeted killings of government officials, journalists, and activists have increased in recent months across the country. Still ahead, survivors of Ireland's mother and baby home say it's too late to apologize for thousands of children who died. Ireland's Prime Minister and the head of the Catholic Church in that country have formally apologized for how thousands of unmarried mothers and their children were treated. The long-awaited report into the so-called mother and baby homes found evidence of rampant infant mortality. More than 9,000 children died at the church-run institutions. As Redmond Shannon reports, many survivors say the report and apology fall short.
Suspicions about what lay beneath this patch of grass triggered the report into another deeply painful part of Ireland's history. Human remains found in a burial chamber inside a decommissioned septic tank. Most likely children born in one of Ireland's mother and baby homes. The secretive institutions run by the Catholic Church were places for unmarried mothers to give birth, something considered scandalous in Ireland up until the 1990s.
We're neglected, no love showing whatsoever. It wouldn't have been done to animals what we had to suffer. And babies crying through the night.
The report, 5 years in the making, says 1 in 6 children died in the homes, about 9,000 in total. But no one knows for sure. Records were often not kept.
I apologise for the profound generational wrong visited upon Irish mothers and their children who ended up in a mother and baby home or a county home.
The report says the unmarried pregnant women were not forced into the homes, but in a society gripped by Catholic shame and guilt, they often had nowhere else to go.
One hard truth in all of this is that all of society was complicit in it.
That assertion by Ireland's Prime Minister Micheál Martin has angered survivors. They say the blame lies purely with political leaders and their one-time de facto partners, the Catholic Church.
And you're saying here today that we're all responsible. I am not responsible. My family was not responsible. The people I know were not responsible.
The report also says adoptions were not forced.
I did not abandon my child.
The movie Philomena, based on a true story, paints a different picture, as do the stories of many survivors. And they say the leaking of the report before they saw it only continues the trauma.
We expect, as we always expected, truth, justice, accountability, resulting in prosecutions should they arise, and restitution for survivors.
The government says it wants to change Ireland's complex privacy laws to allow all survivors to find their biological families. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Up next, we catch up with the faces of the front line who are helping us all make sense of this pandemic. Comedian and TV legend Betty White isn't having a party despite celebrating her 99th birthday. The star of Golden Girls and 5-time Emmy winner is low-key this year. In an email to the Associated Press, White says her only plans are feeding a pair of ducks, then having a hot dog with French fries. She adds, "Since I'm turning 99, I can stay up as late as I want." With over 80 years in television, White has the longest career of any entertainer in the industry. Experts in infectious diseases have been helping the public make sense of the virus. In a short period of time, these doctors have become household names. Our Jeff Semple caught up with a few of them to discuss their own experiences during this pandemic.
This is a rare moment. A chance for Suman Chakrabarti to stop and catch his breath.
On a personal level, it's been a tough year.
And the past couple of weeks have been some of the toughest.
So right now it's 2 out of emerge.
Chakrabarti is an infectious diseases physician in Mississauga, just west of Toronto, in one of the hardest hit regions in the country.
We have, 1,000 COVID cases, but when you actually see a person's face and you see their story, you hear them, you're able to comfort them and answer their questions.
And when it comes to answering complicated questions, it turns out Chakrabarti has a knack.
Here to answer our latest pandemic questions is infectious diseases specialist Dr. Suman Chakrabarti.
Over the past year, he's given countless media interviews, helping to talk Canadians through the pandemic.
I always like to give positive messaging. Nobody likes you finger wagging. I think with that in mind, you can really be effective at messaging, and I try that every day.
And he's not alone. A Zoom call with some of Chakrabarti's closest, oldest friends, whose names you might also recognize.
Yes. Wow, Lisa.
There's the painting.
Classy.
You like beat us all for backgrounds.
Yeah,
completely.
That's an excellent background.
Isaac Bogosh, Zane Chagla, and Lisa Barrett, infectious diseases physicians who go way back. They went to school and trained together.
Quite frankly, I think some of the best friends I've made have been through training, and you spend a lot of time together with people, so you get to know each other pretty well.
And over the past year, Canadians have also gotten to know them. These four friends have become unexpected celebrities, providing a continuous carousel of media interviews.
I think I got some very good advice about 5 years ago from one of my mentors, who said, you know what, if you're given the opportunity to share information with the public, do it often, do it well, because otherwise someone else is going to fill that void and you might not be as happy with the message.
And in this pandemic, there's been no shortage of misinformation.
It's wild watching an idea that's wrong or misinformed form online. What a task it is to combat that.
Jeff Semple, Global News, Mississauga, Ontario.
And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Montreal, where families built these friendly snow people outside care homes as part of a Facebook challenge to bring some snowy smiles to seniors who are staying inside in isolation. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here tomorrow. Good night.